Hi, I'm Mary Julia Koch, and it's my pleasure to welcome a woman with a remarkable life story to the New York Sun today, Yeonmi Park. A North Korean defector and now an American citizen, Yeonmi became a household name for many after her 2015 best-selling memoir, In Order to Live. Since then, she's become a political activist and a critic of what she describes as creeping communist tendencies in America. That's the subject of her latest book, While Time Remains. Yeonmi, it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you for having me.
So I think for audiences who aren't familiar with your story, I'd love to hear from you a bit about what brought you to flee North Korea in 2007 at age 13 and ultimately make it to America.
Yeah, I think when I want to really tell my escape story, I want it to be grand. I was kind of maybe escaping for freedom. But when I was actually in North Korea, I did not even know what freedom was. There was no such a thing called freedom. There's no concept. So when I was escaping from North Korea at 13, I was simply looking for food. I was starving, and hunger means death in North Korea. If you don't eat, you die. So I had to find food, whatever it costs.
Mm. And you lived through some of the harshest periods in North Korea's history. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, it no longer became an economic supplier to North Korea. So did you experience that sort of that political context in your everyday life?
So yeah, I was born in North Korea at the end of I was born in 1993, and that is also several years after Soviet Union collapsed. Until a certain point, North Korean economy actually even sometimes did better than South Korea in the 60s because the economy was heavily subsidized by Soviet Union. But when that stopped, the government had to decide, like, how do we feed people? Because there's no free market system. People are not allowed to trade. So the government decided we are going to feed a certain caste. So North Korea has 51 different castes, even though the country found open the idea of equality of outcomes, where everybody is happy and in a socialist paradise. What they did was dividing into people 51 different castes based on who their ancestors was. So like in America right now, they say white people are guilty because their ancestors were slave owners. Just like that in North Korea, they could not play the skin color game. They had to play the game like if your grandfather was a landowner, your blood is tainted, therefore your caste is low. Your genetics is oppressive. Just like that, so government decided we are going to only feed 10% of people in capital Pyongyang. And we are going to let 90% of the population go starve. So I was not in Pyongyang. I was in the northern part of North Korea. And that's how we have seen one of the worst famines in the modern history. And more than 3 people perished in the 90s. And that's when I was a toddler.
Wow. And so your pathway out of North Korea, you went to China first.
Right.
And then to Mongolia, and then South Korea. So could you take me through that timeline?
So there's no internet in North Korea. I've never seen the map of the world. I never knew there were like different continents even. I literally thought they were like our enemies called American bastards. So maybe Japanese imperialists and China and Russia. That's like I thought that was all about the world. But luckily I was living in the northern part of North Korea in the border town called Haesan. And in Haesan, luckily, I was able to see across the river that was China. And China had electricity lights at nighttime. And in North Korea, they still cannot afford 24 hours electricity in the 21st century. So in that darkness, I saw the lights and I thought, maybe if I go where the lights are, I might be able to find a bowl of rice. So that curiosity led me to cross Yalu River into China. And then when I got to China, I was trafficked as a sex slave. And 2 years of my slavery, I met the Christian missionaries from South Korea who were rescuing us. So they told us that we could go to South Korea, but that meant we had to walk across Gobi Desert into Mongolia. And from Mongolia, I was sent to South Korea. And I was almost 16 by then.
So defections have become increasingly rare in recent years.
Yeah.
It's a crime to leave North Korea, punishable by death.
Yeah.
How have you seen this sort of underground railroad, as it's been called, change since you fled in 2007?
So the defection became really hard under Kim Jong-un. So in some sense, when I was little, defection was there, but it wasn't that government thought these people gonna escape and then gonna try to bring down the government. But as the time passes, then more defectors come out and they do give their testimonies. And the world finally get to see what's happening in the darkness. Because North Korea is the only country a journalist like you cannot just go there and then record what's happening, right? Literally, it's a hermit kingdom. And as the world find out what's happening inside, there's more pressure for the government to reform and start respecting human rights. So because of that, Kim Jong-un realized the defectors are a direct threat to his survivor. He made the whole country into a concentration camp. So he buries landmines in his borders, put the electrified wire fences with the machine guns, guards would standing there, shoot anybody who crosses. And then China would help them. China would put the facial recognition cameras, heat detector cameras, all the AI devices in their border, preventing defectors to cross to China.
So China is an ally of North Korea.
China is running North Korea. That's how, it's not even just an ally. They are the biggest sponsor to Kim Jong-un's regime. Kim Jong-un cannot maintain its power 1 week without China. So China maintains North Korea currently like this way.
So you mentioned the information control that's part of the communist regime in North Korea. Is there any outside information you could access living closer to the northern side of the country? I think it's hard for Americans to grasp what it means to have no understanding of what's happening outside one's own country or anything that goes off the party line, right?
Yeah, so North Korea is completely isolated, right? There's like DMZ, which is South Korea. That's like the most heavily militarized zone in the world. Nobody can really cross. The border with China, that's completely sealed. The North Koreans cannot even make the international phone calls. There's no way people can connect with the outside world. There's one channel, the government channel. There's no independent journalism. So people have no idea what's happening. I literally thought the universe began when Kim Il-sung was born, because North Korea has a different calendar. We have a Juche calendar where Kim Il-sung was born. That's a Juche year 1, right? So in some sense, it's a completely different planet. And when you do have some access to Bible or outside information, it's literally you get killed and then 3 generations of your family get punished along with you. But there were times when I was a child that black market was created in the 90s because people had to find their own ways to survive. And some smugglers would go to China and bring DVDs like the movies like Titanic or like pro wrestling, like WWE Pro Wrestling. So those contents would come in and people get to see the outside world time to time. But it's very severe punishment if you get caught by doing that.
And in 2021, Kim Jong-un passed a law prohibiting I think slang, genes, any sort of foreign influence that's described as reactionary thought is potentially punishable by death. So in the past few years, that's gotten even stricter, that access to outside information, right?
So it was always very bad like that. But yes, genes are made in America. So therefore it's a symbol for capitalism. And therefore you cannot wear that. And it's a joke to the Westerners that North Korean men have to have a Kim Jong-un's haircut. Literally, your haircut is sanctioned by the government. What pants you can wear, what clothes you can wear. Everybody in North Korea have to wear the badges of the dictators in their hearts. And when you go out, if you are not wearing, you get caught by the fashion police. And just not only that, what song you can sing, what book you can read, even how you can move your body by dancing. So literally, every single thing is sanctioned by North Korean regime.
You've written about how you didn't know the word revolution, that's not a part of the vocabulary in school, that the word I is not part of the vocabulary either. You would say we.
Yeah. I remember when I went to South Korea, which South Korea is a free democratic country like America, And they told us, like, introducing yourself. Because in North Korea, I've never introduced myself. Nobody, it doesn't really matter who you are, what you want to do. Your individuality is the worst thing you can be in North Korea. And in South Korea, they're suddenly asking us to introduce yourself. And then I would keep saying we, like we from North Korea, like it's not we, like you, like I from.
Wow.
So like learning the word I was quite an adjustment.
Wow. So I'm curious to hear about your transition to Columbia University, where you graduated from in 2020. What was that like to be on a college campus with Americans in a completely different culture with the internet? How was that for you?
I think I have seen a lot of shocking things in my life, even though I did not live that long time. But in my journey escaping from North Korea, I really have seen the worst of humanity and the best of humanity. But when I couldn't really fathom what I was saying when I got to Columbia University, because when I got there was a really moment I couldn't believe the things that professors were saying to the students. It was almost identical things that what North Korean teachers taught us in North Korean classroom. Like all the problems that we have in the world is right now because of the greedy capitalism and because of the Western civilization. The only solution to all of this is when we destroy the Western civilization, when we destroy capitalism. So this is the exact same thing that North Korean teachers have to teach us because it's propaganda, right? If they don't teach us, they would get killed for that. But voluntarily, this is thing being taught at Columbia University by the most privileged professors and by the most privileged students. And to the point, not just only like the anti-freedom, anti-West, they were even anti-science. Like they say, math is racist. Math is made up by white men to control minority. And I remember the lesson I was learning in North Korean classroom. One day my teacher asked me, what is 1 + 1 in North Korea? And I said 2, and she says it's wrong. If you add 1 drop of water to another drop of water, what does it become? It becomes bigger one. It's not 2. That's how dear leader Kim Jong-il discovered that math is made up by the West to control the minority. This nonsense was believed by the most elite institution called the Columbia University. And that's when I was really baffled. You can be completely brainwashed, even though when you live in the age of information and internet. And it's so possible to be brainwashed. And it's still puzzling to me, how is it possible? But apparently it is. And in some sense, North Korea did not even go that far. Like in North Korea, we don't think there's like 10,000 different genders at least. We know what is a woman. And at Columbia, nobody knows what a woman is. It's like this is based on how you feel. There is no such a called like objective truth. It's all about how you feel. Your feeling determines the truth. And I could not believe this is like 21st century thinking.
Did you speak up in the classroom and challenge some of the things that you disagreed with?
I have tried several occasions, and whenever I tried, the professors would tell me that I'm brainwashed and shut me down. And there were times that I was really legit scared, like how am I gonna be able to even pass the class if I disagreed with my professor? And it's embarrassing, and like I escaped one of the worst tyrannies, and then I still got intimidated, not for like getting executed, but then it costs a lot of money to go to Columbia. It takes a lot of effort to even go there, and if I get kicked out, the consequence is pretty big, right?
And there's a reputational cost.
Exactly.
Friends.
Yeah, and like they are gonna go on Twitter and say I'm a racist, and what can I say? There's no way of defending. All it takes is being accused, right? You don't even need a proof. All it needs to happen is somebody accusing me, and that's all it takes to destroy somebody's reputation in this cancel culture.
Right. So your alma mater has become the subject of a lot of criticism in recent months amid protests over the war in Gaza, and some chants that have been said on college campuses at Columbia and elsewhere include "Death to America," "We are Hamas," are some of the more extreme examples. What would you say to protesters who are arguing that America should be destroyed?
I mean, why they are... In some sense, it makes no sense to me. Like, why? You don't need to even destroy America. You can just go to North Korea or like go to Palestine, like whatever the paradise they describe that is. But it's like, so it's a one time I was really curious. I even genuine. If you genuinely believe America is that evil, you would do whatever it takes to escape from America. Thankfully, America's border is open.
Right.
Nobody's keeping you here, right? If you really hate America and think it's unbearable, you can leave. But nobody leaves the country. So in some sense, like, I don't know, is this some game you're playing? Because if you believe what you're saying, there's no way you're in America right now. You have like left this country a long time ago.
Right.
But if they, let's say if it's not a game, maybe they literally think that America is source for every evil happening. We have to destroy it. That is the only way we can make the world a better place. But then that is also sad because they have no idea what the outside the world looks like. There are millions of human sex slaves in China currently. Never in the past in human history, this many people have been enslaved. The slavery was never ended, right? And these people are chanting as if this is like the worst injustice you've ever seen. So I don't know, how can humans think that way? I really don't know what human nature is, but I also understand that humans are capable of quite great evil. I mean, we've seen that with Hitler, we have seen that with Mao, we've seen that with Stalin, and it is really important when there's evil, we have to fight against it before it's too late.
Right. So do you think the issue stems from a lack of perspective, of understanding history that maybe is a failure within the American educational system, a lack of gratitude also, I think, for some of the benefits of democracy?
So one thing is interesting. I've never understood this until I came to America, that it is a problem when you don't have an actual problem. Because in human history, we did have a lot of problems. We did not have to think about how we felt. You know, like your emotion is the last thing that mattered in the world, because literally every day is like a death and life situation. And because the world became so safe and so prosperous because of free market and democracy, now people really don't have real issues in their life. And then start people getting into their head and just so focusing on their emotions and how they feel. I think because of that, in some sense, that the prosperity really creates a lot of mental illness, it seems to me. I don't know what's the connection there, but there is a downside to prosperity. It seems like people become too soft and detached from reality and the past.
Right.
And it is also seems to me American education has a lot of problem. I'm raising my son right now in America. It's appalling to me that you tell children, like, so even in South Korea, right? In Korea, parents tell their children, it doesn't matter that you did your best unless you become excellent and competent. It doesn't really matter. The goal is being competent. It's not doing your best. In America, your standard is doing your best. So somehow, even though you're not a competent person, it's fine as long as you did your best.
Right.
And that scares me. Like you raise children in an era where that's all it takes to be a good, responsible human being. And it takes a lot of work to be a competent at something, right? And that culture is going away in America. Like that, there is a value being a person who can solve problems, real hard questions. But that's not about it anymore. And also in public schools, I do see a lot of propaganda like North Korea. So I do think it's ultimately parents' responsibility to educate their children. It's not government's job at all. So I think it will just take all of us to fix it.
Right. I wanted to give you the chance to respond to some criticism you've gotten. Some have alleged that you're telling false stories about your home country, that you're criticizing communism just for attention, and that your foray into conservative politics, as some describe it, is a plea for attention. What do you say to those critics?
I was actually in the arms of liberals for a long time. And if you see my track record, I feel even embarrassed how hard I was on Trump. In 2018, when he was meeting Kim Jong-un, I was on the front page of New York Times, the Economist magazine. I wrote op-ed criticizing Trump for meeting Kim Jong-un like that.
And what was the reason behind your criticism?
Because I knew that Kim Jong-un had no intention of getting rid of nukes. All he needed was getting legitimacy in the international stage, right? And also buying time. Because I do think North Korean regime was genuinely scared of Trump. They thought that Trump was unpredictable. And with Trump, they were scared. Like, they were not there to do like long-range missile tests ever, right? They were like, okay, we cannot, because we don't know what Trump was gonna do. Right. And then they realized, okay, with Trump, we cannot be like fire and fury. We need to really like be nice to him. And of course, they understand the American president does not stay in the office for a long time. They do have terms. So North Korean regime thought, as long as we just like stay friendly to him and buy the time, Trump is not gonna attack them. So it was her show that Kim Jong-un put on. And Trump, I understand, he was a businessman. He thought he could like make Kim Jong-un feel secure. So he would get rid of nukes and start open up the country. But that was not gonna happen. And you cannot really sit down with a dictator in the international stage. Even you had a strategy behind it, you didn't have to go there saying, oh, his people love Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un is a good leader. Like, you cannot do that. Like, he's a literally murderous. It's like sitting down with the Hamas leader. Oh my God, he loves his people. He's a good leader. You cannot do that. You do have to call terrorism, right? It doesn't matter whatever your intention was good, or you still have to denounce the evil. And I think Trump was trying to really approach North Korean issue very unconventional way, I would say. And I thought at the time, that was not a good idea.
Right.
So all I'm saying is, I did not have a track record of being a conservative at all. And I still don't think I am a conservative in a sense that what people say. I'm a libertarian, always.
That's the New York Sun, where paper.
But if you believe in family values, when you believe in the role of, like even like spiritual leaders, like all of that, now they say you're a conservative. So I think the world have changed. I didn't change. I think I always have been the same person. I believe in the Second Amendment, First Amendment. I believe the Constitution. And now if you love your Constitution, you are the conservative, you're the bigot. So that's, I think, really makes no sense. But I do think one other shifting points for me to understand was, I wrote in my second book, is that when I did get to meet the leaders in the liberal world, like Jeff Bezos, Hillary Clinton, Harvey Weinstein, all of these people before the Me Too, I got to meet a lot of the people like Nancy Pelosi, all these people who are liberal, talks about how they care about the working class of American people, how they do not support slavery. When I got to meet them face to face and I told them of the suffering of North Korean women, you know what they said? Like, don't tell people that you know me, because they did not want their relationship with China to be affected. These are the most cowards, corrupt people I've ever met. And that's when I got to understand the bottom of liberalism currently in America. It's a lie, and the elites, the liberal elites, don't care about American people at all. All they are after is their personal success. And they are not genuine about fighting evil at all. It's just when it's convenient, when it's beneficial to them, they do take that fake stance. But when there's actual tyranny in front of them, like right now, what are they doing? Like with the Hamas, like they are not standing up or any of terrorism anymore, right? So that's when I really got disillusioned by the liberalism currently. Yeah.
So you weren't a fan of Trump in the last election cycle.
I was not in 2018. And I'm ashamed that I was so ungrateful. Once he was gone, I understood, oh my God, that he was a strong leader. He did keep us safe after all. Like, the country's invaded. Like New York City, I see all these illegal people. I don't feel safe. And like what's happening, the Afghanistan, I mean, the wars have started. Literally, the world is falling apart right now under Biden. And I was so ungrateful, I think. I was lack of perspective at the time.
Right.
Yeah, because nobody can be perfect, right? Yeah.
Would you comment on whether you would support him in the next election in November?
I don't know, but I don't want Biden, that's for sure. I do want a president who has a strength, does believe in America, who can keep us safe. I think that is like very important thing for me right now.
Right. News has broken out in recent days that the Biden administration is bracing for the possibility that North Korea, an ally of Russia, would engage in more provocative military exercises in a sort of October surprise ahead of the U.S. election. This could mean another nuclear test or some aggression against South Korea. Do you have a sense of how U.S. policies should respond? What should we do to prepare against this threat? Are we doing enough right now?
So not like literally not doing enough for sure. I mean, let's say even humanitarian crisis, not even like none of it's our business. We can say that, right? The only thing matters is to U.S. But even that, North Korea's main enemy is America. Their ultimate goal is destroying America. Why do you think they are building all these ICBM missiles? To destroy America. So it's a very different than even other conflicts. North Korea is building this, they have the fourth largest army in the whole world, that tiny little country. And they have such a capability that can hit anywhere in America, right? So it is our problem to deal with.
Right.
Even you believe in isolationism, I believe that too. I do think America should come first. But fighting against North Korean regime is not for like anybody's sake. It's our future, like children's sake, their safety. And when it comes to a point, I do think we already reached that point. It's too big to fail. North Korean capability is so high. There's nothing you can do about it, right? We say the nuclear weapons prevented a lot of world big conflicts, right? Because like literally if we do use it, it's all end of us. And in some sense, North Korea is hoping that they have such a high capability that all we have to do is accept the North Korean regime. And their way of conducting life is like counterfeiting $100 bills, selling the weapons to terrorists. The Hamas getting weapons from North Korea, where do you think they're getting all these missiles? They also support Hamas, right? And that world is not a good world to be in when North Korea gets their way. And that is a normal way it becomes.
Right.
So it is important to deter North Korea before they keep going further.
Yeah. And would that deterrence policy include the U.S. maybe getting more information into North Korea so that the people have a sense of the kind of corruption in their regime? And is there a way in which you could see some sort of a rebellion happen internally, or is that information bubble just too hard to burst?
It's not information bubble or any of that. Ultimately, North Korean government is sitting there sponsored by CCP. So if you expect North Korean people to overthrow CCP, that's impossible. Chinese people cannot even do that. The enemy is too big.
Right.
So the only way we can change in North Korea has to be through China. We have to talk to China. You cannot sponsor the modern day Holocaust. This is the UN says into their COI report in 2014. After conducting 3 years of an immense study, the United Nations came out saying this is a modern day Holocaust. So there are gas chambers in North Korea. But it's not only for humanitarian reasons. Literally, it's the national security threat. North Korea causes so much hacking, sending so much drugs, like all this, the meth and the fentanyl crisis is also made in North Korea. So if we do want these problems all go away, we do need to solve North Korea, and that is only China can change it. China determines we do want to have a less severe version of dictatorship in North Korea. They can. They can replace Kim anytime or replace it with another Kim who was actually his uncle, like Jang Song-taek. Remember, he got like executed by his Kim Jong-un. He was more like we can have a Chinese model where people are not starving and we are not like conducting all these like horrible businesses and still like open market, like a little bit of crony capitalism, I guess, where government has a complete control. So no, China can demand that, but they are not. They want this. In some sense, it makes them look less like horrible, right? North Korea next door, China looks very, very civilized, isn't it?
The Uyghur crisis is getting less attention then.
Right. So we only U.S. can deal with China, and China is the only person who can change North Korea. That's why the Hollywood, nobody makes a serious movie about North Korea, because they have to expose CCP, and nobody want to expose CCP in America in the mainstream media right now.
Right. So would your ideal foreign policy for America right now be to prioritize China on the
Definitely.
geopolitical stage?
I mean, I don't think the threat of China, I don't think anybody really understands how severe this is. Like literally what happened to COVID. They literally destroyed world. The world stopped because of China, and we are still not holding them accountable for that, right? They lied, they cheat. So we really have to understand the threat of China. It's gonna be bigger than the COVID. It's gonna be bigger than anything we've ever seen. And it's so sad to us. Like Americans became soft. They don't understand that we have enemy because we've been one of the number one countries so long. So they don't even understand the concept of having a rival or having an enemy trying to destroy you. And that's where we are in right now.
Right. I want to ask you about the idea of gratitude I mentioned earlier. Looking at what you came from and where you are now, it's a remarkable journey and it's a rare one. And I think a lot of Americans take for granted some of the things that you fought and went through such turmoil and such a tumultuous journey to get here, to access these freedoms. What do you think Americans take for granted?
I do think, though, Americans are the happiest, most generous people in the whole world. I've never met people this warm, this humble. Asia's, even in South Korea, I was discriminated heavily by South Koreans, even though they were same people. I've never met people who are this tolerant. I speak broken English, nobody make fun of me. In South Korea, I speak perfect Korean with a slight hint of northern accent. They make fun of me, literally. And I cannot get a job as a restaurant server because of the accent in South Korea. That's how discrimination works. And there's an actual systemic discrimination where North Korean defectors cannot go to military or intelligence services in certain sectors because they think you can be a spy. In America, I can go to military, I can do anything, right? So there is no systemic discrimination against me in America. So all I have for Americans are gratitude. But there are these elite education systems where the coastal elites, I do see, the hypocrites, the liars, they are the ones that I do think dividing American people. I think American people love their country. If you get out of New York, San Francisco, LA, this is still people with a kind heart. But when you're in New York, the elite in the media, they divide people. And that division only helps them, not the people, right? This is a dictator's handbook, divide and rule. Because when people are divided, you are less strong, you're powerless. And they want that. They want people to be powerless. So I do want people to understand that, the enemy is not each other, not your neighbors.
Right.
It's not. It's really the elite that want to take advantage of all of us and recognizing that. And I do think Americans have a great, immense capability to fixing themselves. If they did get on the wrong track, they know how to correct.
Right.
So I do think it's every day I get humbled by meeting Americans. American people are amazing. And there's nothing to feel bad about it. It's felt horrible to me when I meet white people. They're so guilty about everything. The white guilt is real because you guys are so nice. When did you ever meet Japanese? I'm sorry about the colonialism. They colonized Korea for 40, 30 years, right? And Americans are just too nice. And that's why they're are we taking things for granted? No, just be grateful, be confident. You're good people.
Right.
Yeah.
So my last question.
Yeah.
So you've written 2 books. You have a son who's 6 years old. You're living in New York City. What's next for you in your journey as the voice of North Korea, as you've described yourself?
I do want to expose China. That's my next goal. Working on North Korean human rights space for over my 20s, entire 10 years, I learned that why I couldn't go further with my mission, why Michelle Obama would never sit down with me, try to help the girls who are trafficked in China are sold. Why Oprah Winfrey never invites me to talk about girls whose organs are harvested out of them in China. It's because the American elite have no interest exposing actual evil, right? Michelle Obama has no problem talking about the girls that are captured by Boko Haram and ISIS. Of course, they don't talk about the girls who were raped by Hamas this time, October 7th either, right? Just like that, I realized there's a certain group in America are being benefited immensely having a good relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. And because of that the truth is not getting out. American people have no idea that North Korean women, right now there are 300,000 of them, are being sex slaves in China and sold for like hours over $20 in the 21st century. You sell human beings like that cost, right? So that is my job now. I think I did not know the degree of the government, the media control. The truth is so controlled by these elites. And now I'm trying to talk to you and talk to anybody who's willing to listen to expose CCP, because they are the ultimate the party that is accountable for what's happening.
Wow. Yeonmi Park, thank you so much for your remarkable courage, for your bravery, for using your platform to talk about issues that affect you, that affect our country, that affect the world. And thank you so much for being here with us at the New York Sun.
Thank you so much.